Hi, I'm Alex, and my net worth just crossed $1 million last year. As the founder of an apparel and customization business, I'm my own boss and it's great. Our business was founded by me and my childhood friend, Brianna. Thanks to collaborations and social media success, our company is set to reach even greater heights. Brianna and I are from humble backgrounds, and our new lives as millionaires almost feel like a dream. To be honest, this company wouldn't have been created if not for one thing. I was fired 3 years ago after being turned into the company's scapegoat for a failed project. You may be wondering, how does that make someone a millionaire? I'll tell you the whole story, and you'll realize every cloud has a silver lining. Before I got fired, I was living a terrible life. I wasn't happy with my job or my personal life. It all goes back to my childhood and how my parents caused me to have a breakdown. As the son of first-generation immigrants, Elaine and David, those are their American names, I didn't live the conventional American life. Both my parents ran a laundromat together to make ends meet, and they were constantly scrimping and saving. Even though we lived in Miami's hot and humid climate, our family never turned the AC on. We also used the dishwasher to store dishes, not clean them. That's the kind of life we led. Don't blame mom and dad for it though, and I'm definitely not complaining. There isn't an inherent issue with any of these things. My parents came to America with nothing and had to start from the ground up. I respect that, and I'm grateful that we're able to provide for me during my childhood. However, there was a lot of tension between us because of one thing: academics. That point of contention eventually led to me severing family ties for the better part of my 20s. Although I've recently reconnected with mom and dad, I think you'll understand why I had to take some space from them. Mom and dad believed in good grades as the answer to everything. The two of them also made it their mission to see me in an Ivy League college. My earliest memories as a child are just classes. After school, I was enrolled in a Chinese learning center, which is a place I'm sure many Asian Americans would know about. Basically, it was school after school. The stereotype of Chinese people being good at math doesn't come from us being inherently better at it, but only because our parents were making us study almost 8 hours a day. Apart from the subjects that were taught to us in school like maths and English, I also took part in piano, swimming, and chess lessons. You may think it was a privilege to be given access to all these hobbies, but the truth was far more sinister. I had been forced to take part in all these things because it would look good on my college applications. I hated it. My life was being planned out for me, and I was powerless to work against it. At the age of 11, my parents were already pressuring me to leave no stone unturned for admissions that would happen 7 years later. Why didn't I rebel? Why didn't I have an honest conversation with my parents about it? Well, the truth is that was almost impossible. I was expected to keep my head down and only do what my parents asked me to do. If I showed any sign of distress or tiredness, my mom would emotionally blackmail me about how much they were sacrificing for me. She went on about classes, the piano lessons, all the money thrown at me. Dad was no better either. He would simply tell me that my life was easy and that his generation had it much tougher. Of course, I know now that immigrants who came in my dad's time didn't have it easy, but that wasn't the way to explain things to a little kid. By the time I was a teen, I was a burnt-out kid who was simply going through the motions. I had good grades and extracurriculars, but it came at the cost of no friends or a social life. I became introverted and awkward, with a growing resentment for my parents. In high school, I found an escape through art and fashion. I was really into sneakers and streetwear, just like a lot of kids my age. Of course, my parents didn't get it, but I fantasized about having my own designer label one day. I picked up art by myself and even got pretty good at it. Of course, when mom and dad found out, the only thing they said was that it might be good for college. This hobby of mine was the first one that wasn't forced onto me. It was also how I made my first close friend, Brianna. I had posted some of my work on Tumblr at the time, and we became friends online. She was also into apparel and loved creating outfits from thrift clothes. This was way before the current trend, so I guess you could say Brianna was ahead of the curve. Anyway, we built up a strong friendship over my last few years in high school. Brianna lived in Portland, but I told her about my life in more detail than anyone I knew in Miami. For the first time, I was able to vent about my parents to someone supportive of my own identity and ambitions. She really appreciated my designs and urged me to make something out of them. However, the noose was closing in around me at the same time. Mom and dad were pressuring me for college applications, and I had basically thrown my hat in the ring for every single good college in the United States. Although I half-heartedly wrote my SAPs and applications, my helicopter parents made sure to make me as presentable as possible for anybody in the admissions office. I graduated as probably the most reluctant valedictorian in my high school and got an acceptance letter from both MIT and Stanford. Eventually, I picked Stanford because it was farther away from my family. Not that I ever told them that. My parents were over the moon and began discussing their new plans for me, what major I would take, where I should try and apply for a job, and when I should buy a house and get married. At our celebration dinner, I finally let out my true feelings. Mom, Dad, I need to tell you something. I don't know if college is the right way for me to go. Are you stupid? Where is this coming from? What do you mean college isn't the right way for you to go? Son, you're talking nonsense. What happened? I mean, what am I going to do there? We're going to spend so much money, and for what? Wouldn't it be better if I got a job or tried to start my own business? Alex, I have my own business, and I'm telling you, it's not easy. College means a job, and a job means stability. Don't you want to be successful? Just look at Mr. Lee's son. He went to study medicine and now he's doing so well. Why do you believe everything your friends tell you? I know Mr. Lee's son, and he isn't happy at all. He has to see a psychologist to deal with all the issues his parents gave him. Oh, all that stuff is silly. Psychology is a scam. Listen, you are feeling this way now, but just give it a try. You'll have a nice time at Stanford. You guys never listen to me. I swear, Mom and Dad, I'll be just fine without a degree. No, you're going to college and that is final. Where is all this coming from? It's that white girl he speaks to on the computer. Alex, listen, you don't have the same life as her. You need to study and prove yourself, and that's final. After this, my parents really stepped over the line. Mom went to my computer and went over my chat with Brianna. Upon seeing all the rants I had about the family, she went off on me and called me an ungrateful brat. After that, leaving for college became super awkward. I didn't have the guts to stand up to my parents, but now they knew how I really felt. The three of us were putting up with each other, and that's all. When I finally began to attend college, my suspicions were confirmed. I hated the whole experience. People were super judgmental and snobby. Most of my college friends looked down on people who weren't from prestigious institutions, and there was a whole lot of humble bragging going on. I didn't fit in with the other Asian Americans there since I wasn't a typical CS engineering guy. I'm not typecasting my community, but it definitely felt like I was judged for having an unconventional passion. The only thing I liked was the classes. When the subject matter was something I was into, I loved to learn. I thought I could live with college if I could at least attend classes that I was interested in, but my parents still had their grip on me. I was told that I needed to major in engineering or else they would cut me off. I felt lonely and miserable, and it was hard to convince myself that I wasn't throwing away 4 years of my life. This was a pretty dark period of my life. I had slipped into depression and I was struggling to make my way in California. Eventually, I dropped out of Stanford and my parents lost it on me. I was nothing more than a disgrace and failure. My parents didn't want to talk to me and cut me off. After getting out of college, I began to work odd jobs in order to support myself. My future looked bleak and I didn't have any idea about what I wanted to do with my life. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have the support of Brianna. She traveled down from Portland to help me get back on my feet. It was the first time we had met in person, and it was at the lowest point of my life. I was living in a crappy apartment complex that was basically falling apart. Brianna was doing a degree in art, and she had some freelance gigs as an illustrator that allowed her to be financially independent. Honestly, Bri was much more put together than I was. She offered for me to move in with her. I would have to travel to Portland and start over, but it's not like I was leaving much behind in California. Despite the generosity of my friend, I was hesitant about taking her up on the offer. Wouldn't I be a burden? I felt like I would be a leech and end up crashing on Brianna's couch for the rest of my life. It took her a lot of energy to convince me, and I'm glad she didn't give up. Alex, really, I want you to move in with me. Please come with me to Portland and just rest for a few months. You've been working too hard for your entire life and you don't know what it's like to live at your own pace. Don't worry about the money or anything. I want to help you. No, I can't do that, Bri. I don't want to leech off of you. I'll be fine. I promise. Look, dude, I know you won't. You're going to run out of money eventually, and you need to figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. Your parents aren't going to tell you what to do anymore. With that, I realized that she was right, I didn't have my parents telling me what to do anymore. I had gotten used to having my life dictated to me, so I didn't know how to act when things were finally in my control. I accepted Brianna's offer and moved to Portland, on the condition that I contribute to rent and groceries. I needed it, otherwise it would feel too much like charity. Even though Brianna agreed, she was really generous with me while I was getting back on my feet. It made me realize that it was okay to lean on my friends. I got a job working as a barista at a local coffee shop. At the age of 21, I was finally able to support myself. Life definitely wasn't extravagant, but it was enough. I began to get back into drawing and design and eventually pursued an online certification for Adobe Creative Cloud. Brianna also showed me the ins and outs of the gig economy, and I set up an account on Fiverr. Eventually, I had a side hustle going on and good word of mouth about my work in the local area. Eventually, I was able to move out, and I thank Brianna for all the unconditional support she had shown me. On the day I was leaving her loft, we had a bottle of wine and spoke about our lives together, a fond memory that I still think about it sometimes. Bri, thank you so much for showing me that I could stand on my own 2 feet. Come on, don't thank me, dude. You're ready to face the world now and you don't need anyone. We'll always be best friends, and I know you would have done the same for me. We parted ways but stayed in touch. Brianna began to work in product design for a footwear company, and she was satisfied with her job. I, on the other hand, had grown tired of working as a barista and wanted to make art my full-time career. I spent more and more time getting clients and even putting myself out on social media. My art style was unique and captured the imaginations of a lot of people. Basically, I was a minor internet celebrity. My first break came through Mitch, one of my clients. I had done a few designs for him, and I knew that he worked for a large advertising firm based out of the East Coast. He needed someone for a role in packaging design, and he texted me about the role. I was surprised because I didn't think I had the qualifications to be considered for such a large company. I spoke to him on the phone about the job and everything it entailed. So basically, we're going to need you to design rebranded packaging for our clients. When I reached out to you before, it was basically the same thing. Our previous designer quit suddenly, and I needed to get the deliverables ready before the deadline. I was impressed by your work, Alex. You have a flair for design. Thank you. I would love to work with your company. Just one question though, why did the previous artist quit? Well, I'm not really sure. Maybe it was a personal commitment that she had to work on. But don't worry about that. I'll make sure you work under Peter. He's the team lead for the visual communication department. The guy's great, he's got a degree in business from Harvard, and he really knows how to synergize with people. That sounds great. When can I start? With that, I got my first ever office job at the age of 25. While it may have come late, it was worth it. In my head, I felt like I was finally a mature person who had it all sorted out. If you picture a Venn diagram with passion and profession, I have found the overlap that was going to work for me. Looking back on my mood at the time, I feel like I was a little hasty about joining the company. Yeah, the money was good, but I also had to move to Baltimore and restrict myself creatively for a company. I did no research on how people operated there and whether the work culture was the right fit for me. With the right research, I probably wouldn't have been so enthusiastic about joining. Oh well, hindsight is 2020. All I know is that 25-year-old Alex was over the moon to feel like a real adult. Brianna and I had a party to celebrate my last week in Portland, and I moved to Baltimore to start life as a young artist with his first real job. It was a complete disaster. No joke, I had a breakdown in the first month of work. Mitch was barely present and didn't help me with onboarding at all. My colleagues were all constantly running around and didn't have the time or the motivation to speak to me, and the only person who was willing to have a conversation with me was my immediate super Peter. God, I hated that guy. His whole personality was, "Hi, I'm Peter. I went to Harvard. Kiss my butt." If I thought the snobby grads at Stanford were bad, I was seeing something much worse, and out in the wild this time. The worst part was that this guy didn't even have the walk to back up the talk. I had no idea how Peter had managed to land this job since he didn't even understand the basic principles of good design. His whole deal was just speaking in corporate jargon and making people feel like they were stupid for not getting it, and it somehow worked. Apart from that, he was woefully underqualified. He didn't understand the software we designers used, and his demands were usually vague and poorly thought out. The first project I was assigned to work on was a rebranding effort for a cosmetics company. I sat down with Peter about it, and this is what it went like. Hey Peter, I went over the brief you sent me and I created a few options that the client can check out. This one has a bit of a minimalistic look to it, and this one kind of plays off of the logo. They're both nice, but I think that we need something with a little more oomph, you know? Sure, what are you thinking? We have to stick to the palette the client provided us, right? Maybe we change the font and rework the graphical elements? Yeah, .we can do that. But that's all fluff, right Alex? Where we come in is by providing a product to the client that blows their socks off. We need a creative synergy that will excite the consumer and create passionate followers for the brand. Right. I'll just make a few more ideas. Peter didn't know how to communicate with US designers, and it was so frustrating to work under him. However, I mostly ignored his feedback and just worked off of the brief that the client had provided to me. It usually went well during our pitches, and people really liked the way I approached each brief. At the same time, I also enjoyed the actual work that was taking place. I just hated having to work under a schmuck like Peter. Because I didn't really respect him, his harebrained ideas, or his Harvard education, Peter also didn't get along with me. Eventually, the company bagged a super important client that was going to help us break into the big leagues. It was a multivitamin company that had been started by an influencer, and they wanted us to create a brand identity from the ground up. The only issue was that we were dealing with a client who was a little eccentric. I won't name names, but the influencer we worked with was a bit of a drama queen, and she wouldn't let any decision go ahead without her own approval. Her management kind of skirted around this personality quirk, and we were told to explicitly create packaging that was in line with the kind of aesthetic the influencer had used on her social media page. However, Peter was dead set on doing something different, even though I had spent hours trawling through our client's social media to try and replicate her style on the packaging prototype. My business degree from Harvard colleague wanted to do something different. I'm telling you, her social media page is so chaotic. It won't make any sense if we use those colors and art styles on the packaging. I did some market research, and people are going for minimalist designs nowadays. That may be the case, but I think this client wants her product to reflect her personality. We're not really designing for a company here. It's one person and... No, it doesn't work that way, Alex. Every individual can become a brand, and I'm sure this is what she wants too. If we do things right, we could easily get the product out beyond her fan base and make it appeal to a mass market. Trust me, I have a buddy at Yale who did a research paper on market penetration and the numbers add up. Do one thing for me, scratch all the designs you've done so far. I want you to come up with a few new ideas for the pitch next week. Are you sure that's a good idea? I mean, Mitch told us to be extra sensitive with this client, and isn't it a really big account? Don't worry about it. I'll take the blame if anything happens. And trust me, nothing is going to happen. I know how to talk to these high-maintenance types. With a lot of hesitation, I came up with a few packaging designs that Peter approved. They looked good, sure, but they weren't really recognizable as a part of the influencer's identity. I kept expressing my reservations about the whole thing, but Peter just brushed the whole thing off. Again, his "I know better than you" attitude was showing. It didn't really matter if he was going to talk over me, but I was worried about how the pitch was going to go. Was a notoriously difficult to manage influencer really going to care if he was from Harvard? The pitch was a disaster. The client hated the designs that Peter had come up with, and she ended the whole project then and there. I wasn't part of the meeting, but I knew that it hadn't gone well. What I didn't know was that Peter had pawned off the whole thing on me. He basically switched our positions, saying that I was the one who had pushed to go against the client's wishes. There was a meeting with Mitch where all of this was going to be hashed out, and I went in there not knowing the move Peter had pulled. As soon as I walked into Mitch's office, I was on the defensive. "Okay, Alex, what in God's name were you thinking by pulling a stunt like that?" "Stunt? Me? What are you talking about, Mitch?" "Don't play dumb, Alex. It's not a good look at you. Peter told me everything about the redesign. When I had explicitly told you not to go against the client's wishes, how did you think it was a good idea to do exactly that?" I tried to tell him, but he just wouldn't listen to me. He changed the designs on the PPT at the last moment, see? What, none of this is true? I swear it is. I've even got other people on the team to back me up. Wow, Alex, I can't believe that you're lying right in front of our boss. Despite my protests, Peter had his lackeys corroborate his story. Mitch didn't want to give me the benefit of the doubt at all. I was the new joiner who hadn't proven themselves. Who would take my word for a big-shot Harvard grad, right? After a day of arguing, Mitch finally dropped the hammer. "I'm sorry, Alex. In light of what you've done, I can't keep you in this company. I knew it was a mistake to hire a nobody like you. I expect you gone by the end of the week." I left the office feeling betrayed and humiliated. The power of a fancy degree was no joke, and Peter had saved his skin by sacrificing me, but I wasn't going to take it lying down. The very same day I got fired, I called Brianna. "Hey Alex, this is a pleasant surprise. How's Baltimore?" "Terrible. I just got laid off." "Listen, Bri, I'm finally going to do it. I'm starting a business. I'm done ignoring my passion. I called you because I wanted to ask if you want to get in on the ground floor." Hey, that's my guy. Honestly, I've been thinking about quitting too. Working in corporate just isn't my style. I thought I loved this job, but it's really boring sometimes. I want to design things myself without listening to a bunch of analysts. "All right, I'll come back to Portland and we can work on this together." It may surprise you to hear that our website and social media page were set up in just 1 week. I asked my social media followers to spread the word, and it went really well. Within a month, we were ready to launch our first product. With a mix of good marketing and luck, our brand somehow went viral. Everything was sold out in just 1 hour, and we were barely able to keep up with demand. By working online and keeping our costs low, Brianna and I were making a lot of profit from the get-go. But we didn't want to stop there. The two of us wanted to take this company to the next level. Shortly after our first sales success, I got a call from Mitch. Surprised, I had picked it up out of sheer curiosity. "Hi Alex, I hope you're well. Never better, Mitch. How come you're calling a nobody like me?" "Haha, good one. Listen, I was wrong about you, and I was wrong about Peter. He's been the problem all along. Your replacement just quit because she didn't get along with Peter, and eventually HR launched an investigation against him. A lot of people in the visual communication department spoke up against him, and in that, your name was cleared. The person who sided with Peter told us that he was threatened with getting fired. Honestly, Mitch, that doesn't concern me right now. I think you should run a tighter ship, that's all." "No, here's the thing. I made a mistake by letting you go. Alex, would you be interested in joining back as the head of the department? We can discuss this if you want, but..." "I'm not interested, Mitch. You were willing to throw me away just a month ago. I'm making 3 more now than I did with your stupid company. That's just the first step right now. More importantly, I'm not tearing my hair out over my work anymore. Good luck with finding a replacement." That felt like the last burden I had freed myself from. After that phone call, things just kept getting better. Brianna and I expanded the company, got funding, and even established a proper retail presence. I eventually reached out to my parents and built my relationship back up with them. This time, on equal terms. I proved to my family that it was possible to be successful without having to be a doctor or an engineer. They've also been remorseful about the way I was treated. Mom and Dad even apologized to me directly, which is a big thing. None of this would have happened unless Peter's big ego made him think he could get away with making me the scapegoat. I checked in on him on LinkedIn once, and I guess he's been blacklisted by the company he used to work at. So, I guess he's unemployed. Honestly, he deserves it. But yeah, if Peter hadn't pulled that stunt, I would never have gotten the kick in the pants I needed to start my own brand. I was always doubting myself, and even after I had been cut off, there was a voice in my head that was eerily like my father's. Get a job. Do something. When I listened to that voice and got screwed over, I realized that the only voice I needed to listen to was mine. After finally taking the plunge and starting my own company, life has been steadily getting better than before. I no longer feel uneasy or uncertain about what I'm doing with my life.